Jessica Alstrom, spiritual teacher, medical intuitive, and quantum integration specialist, answers your spiritual questions and assists you through understanding your personal process while providing tools and techniques to move swiftly through the journey back to light.
Good morning and welcome to the Transcendence Podcast. This is your host, Jessica Alstrom, and today I decided to do a podcast, and it'll be as long as it needs to be because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a question and answer. And, for weeks and weeks I've been getting all of your emails, and I love hearing all of your stories, and I feel exactly where you are on your journey, and I'm trying to respond as quickly as I can to the emails. So I thought instead of answering everything, via email, I would just take, 10 or 15 of the questions that seem to have the similar source and answer them in a kind of a metaphysical, higher perspective approach. I wanted to say that most of it all has to do with suffering. I mean, most of the questions that I'm getting right now from you guys is, questions about your own suffering, questions about why do we suffer, questions about, why is the earth suffering, questions about why children suffer. And so I thought I would kind of dive in and, attack those questions first and give you hopefully a higher perspective viewpoint from the way that spirit sees the game versus when you're in 3D, how you see and feel the game is very, very different. This planet that we're on is a learning hologram. And as we learn and move into higher vibration as a species, collectively, the game changes. And what used to be a game of density and control and separation and power struggles is now shifting. And it's shifting back into a game of basically love. 100, 200, 300 years ago, using love to try to change the world didn't get you very far. It got you killed. And now as we move into our ascension process or the shift or whatever you're calling it from your new age perspective, as we evolve as a species, we're learning to kind of use our love sea legs again, and we're learning to navigate life through using love as our only weapon. And that's taken a long time to lay the groundwork for that. And in order for you to really understand suffering, you have to understand separation. Because if you have a fear of death, you don't believe you're immortal. Yes, your body is mortal. So is your car, technically. And so if you were to look at the higher perspective of how soul views body, it is literally like a vehicle to play the video game of, the holographic learning school that it's in. And it doesn't get so attached to the body as you would really believe. And that kind of lays the premise of how we can look at suffering from a higher perspective, because you cannot understand suffering in 3D. You can't. It doesn't make sense. There's too much pain involved. There's too much grief. There's hunger. There's sadness. There's lack. There's grief. There's shame and guilt and humiliation and anger and rage and loss. And there's so many emotions that reside in the third dimensional construct that by viewing the 3D, you could never ever understand suffering. It would just seem too much to bear. So what you actually have to do is you have to look at the game as a 4D, 5D, 6D game in order to understand suffering, because you will never understand suffering from a 3D position. You will never understand it. You will never be able to have gratitude for a child that's suffering in 3D. You have to go into your divine higher realms of vibration, which is a fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional perspective. And the question that I get a lot, and the question that I had in the beginning is, for me, when I was a single mom and I was working on being a powerful manifester, I really wanted to create money for my girls and for myself so that I could, create and didn't have to worry so much about, I wasn't going to have to worry so much about, paying bills. I wanted the money just to come. And so I worked really hard on manifesting, and everything I read said, you've got to be in gratitude and you've got to have the vibration of wealth, and, it's all about love. And then I would look around and I would notice that the richest people in the world didn't have any of that. Didn't have the vibration of love, didn't have gratitude, didn't have generosity, were not putting themselves in service. And I was looking at the wealthy ones that I was holding in high regard because, I was living a 3D perspective at the time. I was starting to learn the 4D, 5D tools of imagination and visualization and intention and gratitude, but I didn't have those vibrations in my body yet, and I didn't understand them viscerally. All I knew is when I looked around, the richest people in the world were not loving. They were not grateful. And so it was kind of a paradox for me, a big confusion. And as I was working with my guides on that, what I realized is that from the 3D game for thousands and thousands of years, the whole premise of the game was about power. And you didn't need love to get money. You just needed to assert and take power back. You needed to dominate, and you needed to be power over. You needed to have power. You needed to hold the monopoly in order to have, the vibration of money in 3D. You needed to be educated. You needed to be beautiful. You needed to be from the right family. You needed to be, understanding that it was all about you. And the game has totally changed over the last few hundred years. And what I was looking at was I was looking at a 3D perspective of how I could manifest money when I'm not a 3D being. And anyone out there that is an indigo or a volunteer or a light worker or an empath, or anyone that's a starseed, anybody that has actually come intentionally to be part of the ascension cannot play in the realms of control. It doesn't work for us. We cannot go against our soul signature. So when we try to play the 3D game of education and control and dominance and power and action and, try to play that game, it actually hurts us so much more because it's going against our mainframe. It's going against the DNA. It's going against the soul signature, because we are the ones who came down to change the program. We are the ones who have come down to say, okay, that's not really going to work. And as I did more investigation, I realized that the richest people on the planet that didn't have gratitude and weren't loving and, weren't giving back and weren't being about service, they were sick and unhappy and miserable and, mentally ill. Because the thing is even if you're not an indigo or an empath or a starseed, you are basically good at the core being of you. And a lot of people have been recycling their life experiences over and over and over and over again on the planet to get it right. And the soul doesn't like to give up. The soul will embody an incarnation right after its death experience to get right back on the horse, basically, and this time actually become aware enough to learn the soul's lessons that they came down here to experience. And instead, they fall right back into the pitfall of, the money game and the power game and the struggle game, because 3D is all about struggling to survive. It's about struggling to get and assert your power. It's all about being better than the next person and then judging the next person, because we're coming from a vibration for thousands of years of a war-based civilization. A civilization which means I have to get you before you get me. We're coming from a civilization of thousands of years where it was hierarchy and royal energy and poverty. There was no in between. And it was all about, who had more power and how can I assert my power so that I can feel big and I can feel strong and I can feel in control. Because the name of 3D is about control. And so for thousands of years, that has been the game on the planet. It has been fear-based control. And that's even why money was created, because money created to be a symbol of your value in place of what value used to be, which was, who you were inside, what you were able to bring to the table, what you can contribute, how you could be of service. That used to be your value. And I'm not saying that for thousands of years the entire planet felt this war-based control, but for the part that became dominant, it took over the places on the planet that were living peacefully. And power needs to assert itself. It needs to continue to grow. It needs to learn how to control others in order to feel safe. And so once it, reigned in its control, it looked for other places where it could dominate and control. And you can see how now religion was created, because religion was created to control the masses into believing that they were going to go to hell if they didn't act appropriately. And then money was invented, and, our Aboriginal cultures and our Indian cultures and our African cultures were basically that were living all in peace, were taken over by control and forced to live a life that wasn't about natural flow, and it was about, following certain belief patterns and suffering for someone that reigns above you. And this is the game. This is the 3D game. And that's why your 3D ego is all about feeling big and being in control and feeling judgment. And it's still got that old timeline belief system attached to it. And if you've come down to be of service and help create the paradigm shift where now the whole planet will be governed through unconditional love, you're never going to fit in that game. You're never going to be able to go get your PhD and that be enough for you, because you're not a 3D being. Therefore, your status, your money, your looks, your family, nothing is actually going to give you the satisfaction of being alive if it's not love. And that has been the biggest problem for, the biggest amount of suffering for the indigo population that is now on the planet to be part of the shift. And the indigos started to come in waves in the 40s. And they were up against a very, very control mindset. They were up against a very power mindset. And so to come in with different belief systems that are basically at a cellular level in your DNA, and, you find yourself being the black sheep and the artist of the family and the one that just, can't keep the job, or the one that, doesn't get joy from the symbolism of what control and power look like, then you end up suffering. And you suffer because everything that you want, is to be a part of a collective, to be part of the community, and nothing inside of you will let yourself be a part of that. And so there's been a lot of suffering for our first round of indigos that have come. I mean, they've always come throughout history to leave their mark and plant their seeds, but they really started to come in waves in the 40s. And then in the 50s and the 60s, and you can see that the byproduct of our first wave of indigos that came in the 40s, look what happened in the 60s. The revolution started to begin. It was all about free love. It was all about, loving each other and living, living in peace. And music became, very, very symbolic with freedom and change. And, the powers that be, the 3D construct, the ones that are wanting to keep the 3D game playing out longer the ones who want oil and, chemtrails and pharmaceutical drugs, and they want disease to be incurable so that, the money can keep coming in. And they want the television to keep you programmed. And, they want all of these things because as long as you're distracted by all the suffering in the world, you don't remember who you are. And you don't think that you actually have a voice or you're big enough to make a change. And so we've been playing this game out for a really, really long time in history, and galactically as well, but on this particular planet, it's kind of like full circle. It's kind of like the melting pot of, the entire universe that is learning to love again. And if the planet needs to learn how to love again, then there has to be a species that comes that already knows how to do that. And that's why you can't create money from a successful job. You can't create money by being in your ego because it goes against your natural thread. You are not a byproduct of an earth carnation for thousands and thousands of years. You are the new energy that already has the upgraded understanding that you are unconditional love. So nothing else is going to satisfy you unless it's unconditional love. And that's why our indigo population and our starseed population, they've resonated only towards animals and nature and music and color and art and other indigos, because nothing about the 3D world resonates at a cellular level to us. And we spend maybe half of our life trying to fit into that box and trying to conform and wanting nothing other than to just be like everyone else for just a few minutes and not have the deep contradiction going on inside of us. But that's why you haven't been able to create your money through power like the other influential millionaires and billionaires on the planet. You're here to create love. And love and money are the same frequency. But we're playing from a love game instead of a power game now. So suffering is used to wake us up. And I used to teach this in my workshops, and my people, would kind of tilt their head and look at me like, they'd raise their hand and say, okay, so if we're all here for love, then, and, the universe is, in control of everything. Why would children suffer? Why would children be abused? Why would there be, mass shootings and refugees and, genocides and destruction? And if you've listened to my other podcast by now, you know that the only way out is through. And there is nothing that opens up the heart space faster than someone suffering. So when you see a child suffer, you open up your heart space and you move into service. When you see something, historically go on and you're an indigo, that's when you light up and you can help. That's when we're rushing to the aid of people who are devastated by, a natural event. I say that 9/11, regardless of the political construct of that particular event and how it actually went down, is irrelevant, because what the purpose of 9/11 was, from a galactic experience, from a divine experience, was we all came together. We all came together and we set aside our race card and our gender card and our, all of these things. And we, especially in the country of the United States, we came to be of service for each other. And we saw how quickly life could be taken away, and it opened up the heart center faster than anything else, next to the genocide of, the Hitler reign. And it's these times where we come together and we remember who we are and remember why we're here. And if you've ever lost someone in your family, you realize how important life is, and you realize all the little silly things that you've been worrying about and focused on no longer matter. So just like there's indigos that have come here to be part of the change, to recalibrate the planet away from power and control and back into unconditional love, there has to be a lot of breakdown and there has to be a lot of chaos as that shift is occurring. Because as people start to question suffering, then they can see suffering from a higher perspective and realize that it's all part of the awakening. It's all part of taking your mindset away from power and control and back into unconditional love, service, and freedom. And you're here for freedom, and that's why you want money. You're here for love, and that's why you want relationships. You know, you're here to create, and that's why you want time. You're here to be able to use your body to, symbolize love and freedom and time and creativity, and that's why you want your body healthy. And so all of the 3D things you think you want are more because you want to experience freedom, and you don't understand yet that freedom comes from loving unconditionally, not fighting for power and control or a hierarchy in your company or, getting that promotion. It has nothing to do with that. And the next question is, why do children suffer? Well, those children who have come here to show you suffering have also been indigos. And they've also been, from the light. And they've also been, our empaths who say, I love this planet so much and I love you so much that I'm going to suffer right in front of your eyes so that you can be a change. So you can be the change. So I get to be the catalyst for your change. And then I get to have a short life here on the planet, and I get to go back into non-physical, and I get to help with the ascension and the shift from behind the scenes. On a movie set, there might be 10 actors, but behind the scenes, there's probably more like 1,000 people working to get that movie set up. And so there are thousands and thousands and millions and millions and millions of non-physical beings helping from behind the scenes to help with this whole shifting process. And if you have someone and you've lost them, they've just decided to reintroduce themselves to the non-physical perspective and help in that way. And the ones who are left here are considered the ground crew. We're here to kind of move into unconditional love regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what's happening on the program in the planet. And it takes a while because we've lived for so many thousands of years in power and control that it's in the human collective DNA. It's in the ego construct. It's in the filtration system. And so you've got to learn to go back to your natural GPS, which is always unconditional love, and live your life according to your highest frequency of joy that you can emit, because joy will be the path that not only takes you to your divine purpose, but it will take you to having everything that you've chosen to experience while you've come. When you listen to the ascension stories, you understand that to go from de-ascension to ascension is a death and a rebirth, a death and a rebirth, a death and a rebirth. And I can ask you to look back over your life the last few years, and I'm sure you've been at least 10 different people. You've become so aware, and you changed so many belief systems about yourself, and you've learned so much, and you're understanding unconditional love for yourself, and you're understanding now why the people who might have raised you were still on that 3D game, and it was all about power and control, and that's never anything you've ever resonated with, but you had to come in to learn the game, to understand what you were here fighting for, and that's to change and recalibrate the planet back into unconditional love from eons and eons of power and control. And if you notice, look at your own ego. Your own ego is still stuck in that. Your own ego still gets jealous, feels like things aren't moving fast enough, always wants more, doesn't think things are fair, is scared of, its environment. It's worried about its health. It's worried about its mortality. And that is your reference point of what's been playing out on this planet for a really long time. So what you have is you have an inner guidance that is more connected to a fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional perspective. And that's why when you start to read the spiritual information and the quantum information and the new age information, there is like this warm resonancy throughout your body that you're seeing and hearing truth for the first time. And that's why sometimes in the darkest hour, the only thing that feeds you is the podcasts and the YouTube videos and the books and the workshops and the guidance and the healing sessions, because that's the only thing that feels like home. You know, you're technically a different species that's come down into a planet that is beginning to awaken. And so when you come down here, you see all of the things that are wrong. You see all the way that people are living and hurting each other. And egos won't be a community. It's always fighting for a hierarchy. It's always fighting for its position and its power. And so that's why even in your family dynamic, you know, you've never been understood or appreciated or respected. I mean, from a 3D perspective, you have to realize how irresponsible indigos look. You know, we look like complete losers to a 3D perspective. And that's why the sooner you can stop worrying about what 3D perspective thinks of you, the freer you'll get. I mean, let's take me for example. In 4, 5, and 6D, I'm living my life's purpose. I'm, you know, in an environment every single day where I get to speak my language and speak my truth, and I get to be a teacher and a student. I get to work with lots and lots of other people that are in their 4D journeys. I get to, you know, be on the radio, and I get to, you know, do my YouTube channel. I get to do workshops. I get to write books. You know, I get to public speak on these topics. And from that perspective, if you were to look at my resume, you'd say, you know, she's doing pretty good. But from a 3D's perspective, I'm going to tell you how I look. From a 3D perspective, I look like I'm abusing my children. I don't vaccinate them. I don't, you know, helicopter parent them. I teach them very, very different rule sets as far as 3D control, which means I'm not trying to break their spirit to make them fit into a collective that is about power and money. I'm trying to open up their heart center to show them what love looks like. And from the outside, you know what that looks like? That looks like I'm an irresponsible parent. I actually went through a couple of years ago when I was going through a couple dark nights where my husband's parents tried to, well, and him too, tried to take my children away because they thought that I wasn't a good mom because I won't vaccinate and that I'm part of some cult, you know, some new age cult. And from their perspective, that's exactly how I look. You know, I don't live in, you know, I don't vote. I don't, you know, I don't work 40 hours a week. I don't, you know, I don't do anything that the third dimensional perspective would honor as success. And therefore, I look like a complete failure from the 3D construct. And that's not always easy when you're living, you know, with a family that hasn't woken up, or people in your life that don't understand what it is you're doing, you know. And for years I worked basically for free because I just loved what I was doing. And, you know, they didn't think that this was a real job. And they didn't think that, you know, I was educated enough to be a life coach or, you know, be a expert in my field, because when I talked about channeling spirit or meditation, that was just one more aspect that made me look crazy. And so I understand what we're all going through when, you know, we start to move into our truth. We look highly, highly irresponsible from the outside looking in. And that's where, you know, the empath gets really their feelings hurt, and the indigo gets really angry when we're not understood. But you have to realize that it's like a different mindset. It's a different perspective. And when I see how my husband's parents view me, in their perspective, they're not wrong. They're just seeing me as a 3D version of someone who is irresponsible and, you know, a parent that's not protecting their children. That's how I look. And that was hard. That was hard to overcome, you know, because one of my things that I had to learn here was I had to learn how to not judge myself and be okay with other people judging me. And that was a really, really intense lesson where I had to learn a lot of humility, because I couldn't stop who I was. I couldn't not be me. I couldn't not stand up here every single day and tell my truth and help people in their darkest hour. And I literally had to go back to that perspective so many times when I would, hear from the lawyer, or I would, hear, something that the family would say about me. And I would have to say, wait, no, I don't choose to believe that. I've helped 100 people this week in their darkest times. How can that be wrong? How can that be wrong? How can that be wrong that, I choose to rescue an animal over, going to a church? It's like, that was my dilemma. And I think that's all of our dilemmas. And, we're here kind of at the front line and the leading edge and the beginning of this big change that by the time our children become adults, they will not have to suffer the way that we have in the contradiction, because our generation came in the absolute contradiction where, we were literally about to destroy ourselves as a species with power and control and genetics and nuclear weapons. And just in time, the shift happened and love became seeded all over the planet. And it's not like it was in the 60s where we're raging against the machine, but this time we're doing it internally, and we're sitting with ourselves, and instead of loving each other and taking drugs to feel, the fourth and fifth and sixth dimensions, we are literally going inside and going into meditation and freeing ourselves from the shackles of the 3D construct. And we need that, we need those awakenings through our struggles. When something's not working, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, it's the truth. It's like you cannot be an indigo, starseed, or empath and live a 3D world. You will never fit into that construct. And if you keep trying, you'll make yourself mad and you'll go insane, and you will totally separate yourself from your higher self. And, if you've ever heard of what the shamans say about the mental institutions, is the mental institutions are filled with fourth and fifth dimensional species that have lost their way and gotten lost in 3D, where they don't know how to find themselves again. And then the 3D can only deal with an empath or a light being or an indigo or a rainbow child or a crystal child through the use of drugs. That's how they deal with us. They deal with us as, putting us on drugs. And what is the drugs doing? The drugs are shutting down the pineal gland. The drugs are shutting down the feelings and the emotions. And those are the GPSs that we use to find our way back to love. And so 3D doesn't know what to do with us. When we take our kids to the doctors and the doctors diagnose us with ADD or, bipolar disorder or any of the other, emotional suffering, then we get diagnosed with something from the 3D because they don't know how to read energy. They don't know the vibration of the human heart. They don't understand that there's a soul connection, an emotional connection that has no way of being measured through their training and their devices. So they can't diagnose a broken heart. All they know is that, you're saying you're sick and the MRI is coming up clean or, whatever, and they don't know what to do with you. So they give you a mental disorder diagnosis, because you must be making it up. So, if you're trying to still fit into the 3D construct, then that is my definition of suffering. When you let go and say, you know what, I'm never going to fit, and no one in 3D and no one in 3D can hear me. They can't see me. They can't see what I'm doing right. They can't see all the people that I'm helping. They can't see the quality of my heart. They can't see how bad it hurts when they put me down. All they can see is, what does my resume say, and what have I done that contributes to the 3D construct? What kind of power have I attained? What kind of success have I attained? What kind of letters come after my name? And how beautiful and thin am I? That is the way that you are judged in 3D. And in 4D, it is the quality of your time. It is the quality of your imagination and your being of service and your genuine opportunities to help, and the rescuing of animals and the taking care of nature and the stillness and the gratitude and the understanding and the place of non-judgment. So in the 3D, we are judged. In the 4D, we are seen and heard. We are understood. And that's why when you find your soul tribe, which is your real family that has nothing to do with blood, for the first time in your life, you feel understood. You feel accepted. You feel like you could tell the darkest secrets to anyone and you wouldn't be judged, because you know what? They would understand why you did the things you did, because you were always trying to fit into a box that you weren't designed to fit into. And why do we suffer? We suffer because we're buying into the old system when we came here to create the new one. And any child that comes down here and goes through child abuse or illness or disease has signed up to be a specific teacher for you in order to teach you and remind you of who you really are. And I'll tell you, more souls are lined up to take bodies that are special needs and, not the status quo, and autistic and, unique and sensitive than anyone who would come down here to have the perfect body and shape. Because if you had the perfect body and shape, you could get very lost in 3D because you would fit in there. And if you fit in 3D, because of the way you look, yet your heart resonates to 4 and 5D, you're going to suffer, but you're going to love the power that comes with being that perfection. You're going to struggle more. So a lot of us have come down slightly distorted in what would be naturally considered, perfect from a 3D construct. And, we have our self-chosen limitations so that we won't fall too deeply into 3D. And that's why our children are choosing autism. And that's why our children are choosing, to come in with Down syndrome and all of these other, qualities that make them unique. Because they are here to teach unconditional love. And if you've, come from a 3D construct, you know that the only way you're really loved is if you're perfect. And an autistic child is far from third-dimensionally perfect. It is fourth-dimensionally perfect because it is, in its unique perspective, having its own experience, and it really doesn't care whether you like it or not. That's 4D, that's 5D. A child that has Down syndrome, they are the frequency of unconditional love, yet they're not going to play the game that you're trying to get them to play. They're not going to behave the way you want them to behave. And so that's why we've chosen these limitations, and so we can't get too lost into 3D. And that's why our families never understand us, and we're never accepted, and we never fit in because we weren't supposed to fit in. And the suffering around us, it triggers our heart center, and we begin to want to be of service. And that's how we begin to wake up, because I will tell you, most of the things that have woken you up have been your greatest struggles and pains. And those are the things that are happening on the planet. It's almost like if your body is having pain, that's your message that you're not self-loving, that you're not paying attention to it, that you're off of your soul's path, and so you will get sick. If you see, an earthquake, that is a message from the planet telling you, there's things that need to be looked at here. Unconditionally needs to love. We need to come together as a community, and we need to take care of each other, and we need to rescue each other from, the struggles. And just like a child suffering, you were suffering in your own way, and the only thing that really opens up your heart center is for you to be of service, because to be of service is unconditionally loving, and that's how this game is going to play. And so it's not like one day we're all just going to wake up and love each other. It's a moment by moment by moment by moment check-in of, what you're afraid of. Because if you're afraid of death, that isn't you. That's your ego. If you're afraid of not being perfect, that is your ego. If you're afraid that you don't have enough money, that is your ego. That is the third dimensional game that you're still focused in. And it's so awesome when I go downstairs and we have our downstairs center where we do our brain tap systems. And I see these people laying in this chair on this meditation device that reprograms the brain out of 3D, basically back into 4D. And I get to see literally people being unplugged from the matrix. And I just have this amazing feeling in my heart when I walk by and see people literally unplugged from the matrix, because I know that they are going to have a fighting chance against, who they think they should be and who they actually are inside. Because all of your illness and all of your suffering comes from you aren't allowing yourself to be who you came here to be. And you didn't come here to fit into the bubble. You didn't come here for, the degrees and the money. Although those are fantastic and they can help you be more of who you've come to be, and I hope that you're using them, if you do have them, to be more of who you are, but it isn't why you came. You literally could come down here and spend 14 years in school and be out of alignment with your soul's journey and resist the hell of it and be in school because you're afraid to not be in school. And you could then, get done with school and rescue one puppy, and you would have been in your complete divine purpose in that 5 minutes. So it's not about what you have or what you look like or, who you are to 3D people, because they can't see you, they can't hear you, they can't nurture you. Power cannot nurture. Only love can nurture. And so if you've attained any of the soul wounds that I talk about in my other podcast, the soul wounds, it's all coming from being lost in 3D and being wounded on the battlefield that isn't even your fight. It's not even your war. You didn't come here to fight. You came here to love. And that is the only thing that's going to heal you. That's the only thing that's going to heal your body. That's the only way that you can achieve wealth, is through love, which means that when you start becoming of service and you're doing it with no expectations, all of a sudden you start getting paid somehow to be you. Because you cannot attain wealth through power as an indigo or an empath. It's not in your DNA. You have to attain wealth through love. And you have to love yourself, which means you got to stop hating yourself because you can't fit into the 3D bubble. You have to stop hating yourself for not being able to be in control. You've got to stop hating yourself for not, judging yourself for not wanting to go to school and not wanting to be part of this system that's broken. You've got to let go and find the ones that are here on the planet that are just like you, and that will start to make you feel like you're home. Because if you feel homesick right now for a place that you don't know, it's because you're trapped in a 3D world and you're not a 3D being. You are a 4D being. You are a higher frequency, unconditionally loving source of light. You are not trapped in the game. You just believe you are. Therefore, when you try to inject yourself into that game, you're going to be pushed around, bruised, beaten up, and judged. And when I finally realized that, I had started to spend so much time with higher vibrational beings, and when I would find myself going to, a big group of people and feeling absolutely invisible, I realized that no one in the 3D can see and hear me anymore. They can't. I'm not a vibrational match to them. Therefore, they completely ignore me. And it hurt my ego at first. And then I realized they don't speak, we're not speaking the same language anymore. And so, I hope that this is kind of helping, because most of the emails that I'm getting is that you're all totally aware of who you are within, yet your surroundings and struggles are still you trying to fit in to a world that will never, ever accept you. That's where your struggle is coming from. And if you could just let go of that struggle and find like-minded people and recalibrate your own energy field and raise your personal vibration, you not only would be wealthy, but you would feel beautiful. You would feel perfect. You would feel understood, and you wouldn't feel judged. But no matter how successful you get, you will never, ever, ever be liked and admired in 3D. Ever. Which means that if you're an indigo who has a PhD, you're going to still be judged. It's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. If you are perfectly gorgeous and perfect, and you are not 3D and you are an empath, you are going to be judged. You are going to feel everyone's pain, and you are going to feel like you don't fit in, and you are going to feel ugly because you aren't in the frequency and you aren't with your people. You aren't with your tribe. You aren't with the ones who see you as you. And that's all the suffering is ever about. And once you let go of that and you say, I don't have to suffer because these people are never going to see and hear me. I just need to go where I'm celebrated. I need to go where I feel like I'm home. I need to go where people are speaking my language. And if you don't have anyone right now, you have the books, you have the material, you have the podcasts, you have the YouTube videos, you have the teachers. You could literally spend every waking moment with all of us until let that wall down, open your heart, and let us into your real life. Because we're all waiting to be together. All of these star seeds that have been planted all over the planet are looking for each other. And what you are seeking is seeking you. And the reason why your relationships are not working is because you keep choosing a 3D partner. And you are not 3D. You can't make that work, no matter how much potential you see. Maybe they're on the cusp of waking up. Maybe they're living between worlds. There's a lot of people right now that have 4D perspectives but live 3D lives. And that's going to be great, but it's going to feel like they wake up and go to sleep, wake up and go to sleep, wake up and go to sleep. And that's going to be painful for you because you're going to see all of their potential and you're going to be like, if you could just wake up, we could be together. And it has to be their choice. It has to be their divine time. It has to be, their self-will. It can't come from you. You can't guide anyone's journey. You can just love them. And so I hope this is making sense, because you can have wealth in 4 and 5D. You just can't attain it through power and success. You have to attain it through self-love and service and inspiration and imagination, and that leads to ideas and solutions and inventions and all the things that we're going to need in order to change the planet back into the vibration of unconditional love as we move out of power. So I hope this was somewhat resonating to you. I tried to kind of skim over the top 15, 20 questions, and they were all basically the same. It was all about suffering and not being understood, and why do children suffer, and why is it so hard, and all of that. And I hope that this made sense and gave you a little bit of more understanding of who you are and the game that you're actually playing. Because when you can let your guard down and know that there's just going to be some things that you're not here to experience, but you can always have everything you desire, but it has to come from your specific signature and frequency of soul. It can't come through, the 3D construct. Then you literally can have it all. So just food for thought today. Please continue to write questions in, and as I get more questions, I'll do another answer session. But this is the how and why do we suffer segment. And, please go to our website, check out all of my other radio shows, check out my other podcasts. If you're interested in Brain Tap or MindFit, please email us. I will tell you that if you email us or call us from one of these podcasts or YouTube videos or anything you've heard from us around town, we will give you a $100 discount just for calling in off of the manufacturer's price. So it's below wholesale if you call us and just say you heard one of our shows or podcasts. And I will be in touch with you guys all very soon with another podcast. I'm going to be doing a PTSD podcast and another podcast on, creating money through love.
Thank you for joining Jessica on this transcending episode. Email us directly at jessicaalstrom@gmail.com with your questions and personal challenges you would like addressed on the show. and join us on next week's podcast. You are not alone, and remember, your higher self speaks to you through people, places, circumstances, and events.